Welcome to Stuff Works Explained. If it's your first time here, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. For repeat viewers, we thank you for the support that you have given this channel. In today's episode, we'll be tackling a rather interesting topic where African leaders have been trying to mediate peace between Russia and Ukraine. We know of African countries as a country of turmoil where leaders from other parts of the world come to Africa to broker peace. But this time around, it's African leaders who are doing this. A group of African leaders met with Ukraine and Russia president on June 16th and 17th, 2023, respectively. The delegation included the president of Senegal, South Africa, Zambia, the Comoros, Egypt Prime Minister, and an envoy from Uganda. The African leaders have been trying to mediate a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, and they have been urging both sides to come to the negotiating tables and find a peaceful solution to the conflict. The meetings in Kyiv, Ukraine, and Petersburg in Russia were the first time that the African leaders had met with the two leaders since the start of war in Ukraine. The meetings were seen as important steps in the African leaders' effort to mediate a peace agreement. The first meeting was between President Zelensky of Ukraine, where they met on 16th June. According to the sources, Zelensky thanked the African leaders for the attempt to broker peace between Ukraine and Russia, and he appreciated the efforts of African leaders to mediate a peace agreement and hoped that they will be able to convince Putin to withdraw his forces from Ukraine. However, it was clear that there will be no peace without withdrawal of Russian troops. The African leaders said that they met both Zelensky and Putin in order to hear both sides of the story and try to convince the two to bring this conflict to an end. They said that they were committed to playing a role in bringing peace to Ukraine, and they urged both sides to come to the negotiating table. The meeting began with a discussion of the war in Ukraine, where President Zelensky briefed the African leaders on the situation in Ukraine, and he highlighted the impact of war on the Ukrainian people. The African leaders expressed their solidarity with Ukraine and they condemned the Russian invasion. The leaders then discussed ways to strengthen cooperation between Ukraine and Africa. They agreed to work together to address the challenges posed by the war, such as rising food prices and disrupted trade routes. They also agreed to explore opportunities for increased trade and investment between Ukraine and Ukraine and Africa. The leaders also discussed the importance of multilateralism and the need to uphold international law. They agreed that the war in Ukraine is a threat to the global order, and they called for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The meeting concluded with the issuance of a joint statement in which the leaders condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine and called for the immediate ceasefire. They also expressed support for the Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Some of the major topics that were discussed in the meeting include the impact of war on Africa, the ways to strengthen cooperation between Ukraine and Africa, the importance of multilateralism and the need to uphold international law, and a peaceful resolution to the war. The meeting was a significant event in Ukraine's Africa relations. It showed that Ukraine is committed to building relationship, and African countries are keen to bring this conflict into the end. So let's hear to what transpired in the press conference.
In the capital, alongside the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Радий сьогодні вітати в Україні таку делегацію представників Африки, континенту, чий голос повинен чути світ, і тим більше, коли йдеться про фундаментальні безпекові питання,
particularly when we're talking about fundamental security issues and the restoration of the full power of the UN Charter and the whole system of international law. Unfortunately, this day started with yet another Russian terrorist attack against Ukraine. Cruise and ballistic missiles of Russia has shown the real attitude of Russia to all the efforts as to the restoration of the peace, and to all the leaders of the world trying to protect the whole world from the aggression. Russia is the only source of war and the only reason why the consequences of this war are causing damage to the whole world, to different nations on different continents. Nobody can feel and that their borders are protected and the safety of their people are ensured, while Russia is attempting to make the aggression and the abduction of people as something that is normal. Surely the withdrawal of the Russian forces from Ukraine, this is the only thing that is able to stop this war. Ukraine nor the whole world is requiring another frozen conflict. We need first is the peace formula. I have described how specific points of the formula would allow to restore the safety for Ukraine and the security for other nations that are receiving certain damages as a result of Russian aggression, the food safety, the nuclear safety and security, the safety of free shipping, and the social security around the world. All of this is possible when there will be no aggression, when the peace formula would be implemented. All the nations of the world have the right to live freely without any foreign influence or any other political influence. I am grateful to the participants of our meeting for supporting the principle of the territorial integrity and the protection of nations from the aggression. I have seen the prospects for our joint work on certain points of the peace formula. Surely I have invited the African countries to participate in the Global Peace Formula Summit that we are currently preparing. Mr. President, the prime ministers and high dignitaries, they were visiting Bucha and they've seen the consequences of Russia's actions, that they're bringing only death and the strong feelings. Yet I've explained how we could overcome the crimes and how to prevent these crimes from happening again. For example, the crime of mass deportation of the Ukrainian children who were abducted from the occupied territories and taken to Russia. We've talked about the consequences of Russian terrorist attack at the Kakhovka hydropower plant, the consequences for the people, for the environment, and for the infrastructure facilities, more specifically the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant that remains under the occupation of Russian forces for over a year. They're using that as a cover for shelling our own cities. And the radiation has no borders. It can reach all the continents. It is only the deoccupation of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia can guarantee the reliable protection against the nuclear incidents on the station. I've called upon the members of our meeting to introduce their own vision on how this could be achieved on the conditions that the only thing that Russia is interested in is in production of more missiles and committing more crimes against the UN Charter. Any negotiations is considered by the Russian leadership as the ability to gain more force and to have even more aggressions, and Ukraine has been persuaded of that. I've already mentioned that having any negotiations with Russia while the occupying forces are still in Ukraine would mean only that there would be an attempt to freeze this conflict. This is the reality. Russia, for many years, tried to trick everyone with Minsk, and it is evident that Russia is trying to go back to their old and primitive tactics of deceiving everyone, but Russia wouldn't be able to deceive anyone else, and surely Russia is unable to deceive Ukraine anymore. Once again, there is a need for real peace and the real withdrawal of Russian forces from the territory of our independent Ukraine, European soil. Ukraine has demonstrated our global strength in matters of food security of the world, and the food security directly depends on our ability to produce and to export the food products I have informed the participants on the results of our initiatives, the grain initiative and the humanitarian initiative called Grain from Ukraine. We're truly supporting the world and many nations of Africa, Asia, and Europe to maintain social stability and price predictability of the food market, thanks to our expert. Together with our partners, we're working on the establishment of grain hubs in Africa. The supply of food has to be guaranteed, and the right of every human to food has to be provided despite any institutions. I believe we could support that. And we can also support through providing education to the citizens of partner countries. We're ready to scale up the educational programs for the students from the African countries. But for this to happen, we need to fully restore the power of the UN Charter, the principles of the UN Charter, and to stop this Russian aggression and to free our land and our cities from the Russian imperialist evil. For that, we need to have some global efforts. I thank to all those assisting Ukraine, and by doing so, they're assisting their own security. Thank you for the attention.
And that was Ukraine's president speaking just moments ago in the company of 4 African presidents who on Saturday will be traveling on to St. Petersburg. Let's stay in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, and correspondent Gulliver Cragg. We heard there Volodymyr Zelensky repeat one of his mantras, calling for a genuine peace that includes a Russian withdrawal, not one that freezes the conflict.
Yes, Volodymyr Zelensky was pretty clear and repeated it several times over the course of the press conference that he does not think that negotiations with Russia can lead to any kind of lasting peace at the moment, and he did not hide his disapproval of the African delegation's plan to travel to St. Petersburg on Saturday. I think the Ukrainian side also perhaps slightly hoped that the missile strikes on Kyiv region today, which were all shot down thankfully by Ukrainian air defenses but did injure several people in Kyiv region, might dissuade the African delegation from going there. It was really pretty clear from this press conference that this had been a very antagonistic discussion with some big differences of opinion. Volodymyr Zelensky trying to convince the Africans that no negotiation with Russia is possible until Russian forces leave Ukrainian territory. The Africans trying to convince Volodymyr Zelensky, in the case of the president of the Comoros and also Cyrl Ramaphosa to some degree, that the only way to end any conflict is ultimately by negotiations. It seemed very much that they weren't on the same page. Another major topic of discussion, of course, was global food supplies. And there it was again Volodymyr Zelensky who seemed to be the most agitated, trying to take the opportunity. He felt he was probably speaking to African audiences to underline that the problems on global food markets are not, in his words, just a consequence of a conflict, but the consequence of a direct, deliberate decision by the Russian Federation to block Ukraine's ports, to prevent Ukraine exporting grain via its Black Sea ports. It's not an inevitable consequence of the fact that the war is ongoing.
4 African leaders, let's just remind our viewers, you have the presidents of South Africa, the Comoros, Senegal, and one outlier, Gulliver Cragg, Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema, the only one of that quartet who has denounced Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Actually, no, he's not the only one. The president of the Comoros also voted for the resolution earlier this year condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and he repeated that several times during the press conference. He actually stood out from the others as the most pro-Ukrainian, I would say. The Zambian president didn't mention that resolution and made only a very short declaration.
Cyrl Ramaphosa talked about the need for a free flow of grain. What can you surmise from that?
It was absolutely clear from what they said, and also from the moment when Volodymyr Zelensky perhaps got the most agitated was when he started to, in a way, almost complaining about the fact that the Africans seem to be insisting so much on the free flow of grain and also the need to open an ammonia pipeline that crosses Ukraine, which Ukraine is refusing to open until Russia frees all prisoners of war and political prisoners. Volodymyr Zelensky clearly revealing that there had been a lot of discussion about that. Cyrl Ramaphosa also said, quite frankly, that there had been a lot of discussions that they could not actually reveal in public now at this press conference. Certainly the issue of grain is a very, very important one. Russia is threatening to pull out of the Black Sea grain initiative that allows some grain to be exported via Ukrainian ports. Volodymyr Zelensky was stressing that it's not even working at the moment properly because Russia is slowing down the passage of ships.
As
a country that cares and is trying as best it can to get Ukrainian grain exported to the countries that most need it. He talked about the Grain from Ukraine initiative and so on. It was more a case of Volodymyr Zelensky trying to sell what Ukraine had already done and emphasize the fact that the problems on grain markets are not Ukraine's fault, rather than any announcement by anybody present of any new initiative or any new decision.
Gulliver Cragg, many thanks. Earlier it was South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa's turn to speak, and Gulliver mentioning there the differences of opinion at times between their host and those four African presidents.
Thank you very much. Would like to start off by thanking President Zelensky for allowing the 7 African countries to participate in this peace mission. This is indeed a historic mission in a quest for peace. And I could say that our mission really revolves around 10 key elements. The first one is that we are here to listen both to President Zelensky, and tomorrow we'll be listening to President Putin. And we do so with deep respect for the people of Ukraine, which we have expressed to President Zelensky, but also in recognition of the proposals that they have put forward as a peace formula. We're going to also listen to President Putin with regard to how he sees the road to peace. But we've also taken cognizance of a number of other proposals that have been made by a number of other parties around the world. And we do believe that this process for peace, much as it is complex, requires that all viewpoints must be put on the table. A second key element that we bring here is that this war must be settled, and there should be peace through negotiations and diplomatic means. And we should, as we advance towards that peace, because all wars in the end do come to an end, and we believe that this war should be brought to an end as quickly as possible through negotiation and diplomatic means. The third element for us is that there must be a de-escalation of the conflict. Today, as we were here, we heard of missile strikes, and those types of activities are not good for fostering peace. And we argue that there must be de-escalation on both sides so that peace can find a way to resolve the problem. We recognize the fourth element, the sovereignty of nations and countries in accordance with the UN Charter that must be respected. The fifth element is that there must be a guarantee for security for all countries. The sixth element is that both countries must ensure that there is movement of grain and fertilizers. What has also brought us here is that Africa is also feeling the negative impact of this war. Our grain prices have gone up and there's a shortage. Fertilizer prices have also shot up. So even as we are thousands of kilometers away as African countries, we are feeling the impact of this war. And we say that when it comes to things like grain and fertilizers, there should be an opening up of the logistics so that grain and fertilizers must get to the market. The seventh key element is the humanitarian side, that there must be humanitarian support. There are people who have become victims of this war, who are suffering, and we support that humanitarian assistance must be given to those who have become real victims of this war. The eighth key element for us is that the prisoners of war must be exchanged, and that there must also be a return of the children to their homes. The ninth element is that there must be post-war reconstruction. There should be assistance to those who have suffered as a result of this war, and there must be reconstruction. The 10th key element for us is that during the course of our discussion, President Zelensky said, yes, we should engage further, and we as African countries are prepared to participate in further engagement. We never thought that our engagement today, and say tomorrow as well in Russia, will lead to the result that will end this, but we want to engage so that a peaceful solution is found. So we welcome President Zelensky's openness that there should be further engagements, and as African leaders we stand ready and willing to have further engagements. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa speaking just a short while ago in Kyiv alongside his host and Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky and those other African leaders. This before traveling on to St. Petersburg. Ramaphosa, who
after meeting President Zelensky of Ukraine on 16th June, the African leaders met with President Putin on 17th June. The meeting was held at St. Petersburg, Russia, and the African leaders who were present in that meeting, including President Azali of Comoros, Macky Sall of Senegal, Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, Lema of Zambia, Prime Minister Mustafa of Egypt, and Foreign Minister of Republic of Congo, Jean Gakoso. There was also a special envoy for peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Miguel Trovada of Uganda. Some of the topics that were discussed in these can be summarized as war in Ukraine and its impact on Africa, way to strengthen cooperation between Russia and Africa, the importance of multilateralism and the need to uphold law, and also the peaceful resolution to the war in Ukraine. The meeting was initiated by the African leaders who wanted to discuss the war in Ukraine and its impact on Africa. These leaders wanted to explore ways to strengthen cooperation between Russia and Africa, and also bring peace in this part of the world where conflict is ongoing. The meeting was held in a closed-door meeting, so some of the details for discussion were not publicly available. However, it is believed that the African leaders expressed their concern about the war in Ukraine and its impact on food prices and energy crisis, and they also urged Russia or Putin to end the war as soon as possible. Putin is said to have told the African leaders that Russia is committed to finding a peaceful resolution to the war. He also said that he is willing to cooperate with Africa to address the challenges which are posed by the war. The meeting ended with an issuance of a joint statement with the African leaders and Putin expressing their commitment to working together to find a peaceful resolution to the war in Ukraine. They also called for an immediate ceasefire and resumption of negotiations. The meeting was seen as a positive step by the African leaders. They believe that it will help strengthen cooperation between Africa and also finding a peaceful resolution to this ongoing war. However, it is important to note that the meeting did not result in any concrete agreement. It is still unclear how Russia and Africa will work together to address the challenges posed by the war. Only time will tell if the meeting will be successful in achieving its goal. However, it is a step in the right direction and shows that there is some commitment to a peaceful resolution to this war. So let's listen to press statement that was held between or the discussion that was, or the statements that were issued by the African leaders and President Putin.
President, good to see you. Very good. See you, President. I want to extend greetings to you, President Putin, President of the Russian Federation, and indeed also extend my greetings once again to my fellow heads of states, as well as the other colleagues or heads of government and envoys of the presidents who cannot be here. Let me say that we would like to thank you for agreeing to meet us. We are a 7 African nations peace initiative, and we are essentially on a peace mission to try and promote peace between Russia and Ukraine in this conflict. We have some 7 points or 10 points that we would like to raise. Our proposal really revolves around 10 elements. The first, of course, is that we want to listen. We're here to listen, as we did listen yesterday to President Zelensky. He outlined a number of issues to us, and we did tell him that we would be meeting you, where we would also listen to your perspective on this war, and we want to listen with respect and also with recognition of the views that you will put forward to us. But we also recognize the many other proposals that have been put forward by a number of key players in the world who have put forward peace proposals. And our proposals are not in competition with the other proposals that have been put forward. The second point that we would like to raise, a key element of our broad proposal, is that we do firmly believe that this war must be settled, and it must be settled through negotiations and through diplomatic means. The war cannot go on forever. All wars have to be settled and come to an end at some stage, and we are here to communicate a very clear message that we would like this war to be ended. We say so because this war is having a negative impact on the African continent and indeed on many other countries around the world. As a continent, we are being negatively affected in terms of our economies. The prices of commodities have gone up, particularly grain and fertilizer, and the prices of fuel have also gone up, and this is a consequence of the war that is ongoing. And it is for this reason that we are also here, that it is in our collective interest that the war should come to an end. The third point we would like to put forward is that we would like to see a de-escalation of the conflict. The escalation of the conflict on both sides does not enhance the peace process. So we would like to see the conflict being de-escalated as we find a way to peace. The fourth point, which has also been covered in a number of other proposals, is that we recognize the sovereignty of countries in terms of the UN Charter. And yes, in terms of that charter, we believe that all of us should work in terms of internationally recognized principles, and it is for that reason that we would like to submit that we recognize the sovereignty of countries in terms of that charter. The fifth point we would like to raise is that there needs to be a guarantee of security for all countries. This matter has been raised on all sides, that all sides want some guarantees, and we agree with that. The sixth point we'd like to raise is what is affecting our countries, and we would like to call for the opening up of the movement of grains across the Black Sea, so that whatever blockages there are should be opened up, and the grains and commodities must be opened to the markets. The seventh point we'd like to put forward is that we should ensure that there is humanitarian support for those who are in need and for those who are suffering as a result of this conflict. The eighth point has also been raised by President Cyrl with regard to the release of prisoners of war on both sides. The other issue that is related to this is the children who have been caught up in this conflict should also be returned to where they have come from, their homes. The ninth point for us is that as every war leads to destruction, there should be post-war reconstruction, and we should support the reconstruction that needs to take place beyond this war. The 10th point, President Putin, is that we would like to see further engagements with regard to the processes that will lead to the end of this war. We articulated this point specifically with President Zelensky, and he agreed that yes, as the African continent and as African countries that are here, we can play a role. So we would like to urge that beyond this engagement today, there should be further engagements, because ending wars does tend to take a number of meetings and engagements. And as the African continent represented as 7 countries who are here, we do believe that there's a contribution we can make. And we make this contribution with the greatest respect to both countries, respecting the positions that they have put forward, but also believing that there is a common position that can emerge, a position that can lead to peace. A number of proposals that have been put forward, we believe, lay a foundation for a peace to be found. And this is precisely what we would like to explore, so that all of us together can contribute to bringing this war to an end. Those, President Putin, are the key elements of our proposal that we put forward to President Zelensky, which we also now put forward to you. And we do believe that this is the time for both parties to negotiate an end to this war, because this war is causing a great deal of instability and harm to various countries around the world. And we as African countries are feeling the impact of this war. So this is what we have come here to share with you. And I'd like to end by saying this is a historic mission. The African continent, represented here through the 7 countries, has never really been involved in a mission of this sort. So we would like to say that we've taken this step, believing that yes, we can contribute, and would like to thank you for giving us the time to listen to what we've got to say, but more importantly, we want to listen to you as well. So thank you very much for welcoming us.
Convey to you, Your Excellency, and to the Russian people, peace between your two. We have been consistently promoting further strengthening of traditionally friendly relations with African countries, and the main regional grouping, the African Union, based on the principles of equality, mutual respect, and non-interference into domestic affairs. This year, our cooperation with African partners on the widest range of issues has been developing rather actively. We are preparing for a landmark event, the second Russia-Africa Summit, to be held soon here in St. Petersburg. I'm confident that at this event we'll set out new prosperous vectors of cooperation in political, trade and economic, scientific and technical, humanitarian and other fields. I would like to stress in particular that Russia has deep respect for the principled position of African states in favor of preventing global and regional stability and security, as well as peaceful conflict settlement, and creating a just model of international relations. We support your desire to conduct independent, sovereign, and peaceful policy. We welcome the balanced attitude of our African friends with regard to the Ukraine crisis. Distinguished friends, we value your interest to settle the conflict. We immediately accepted your proposal to hold negotiations on the Ukraine issue. I know that you have specific ideas and proposals in this context. Together with President of the Republic of South Africa, we discussed it on multiple occasions, and I'm grateful to him for raising these issues. I would like to stress once again we are open for constructive dialogue with all those who wish peace based on the principles of respect for each other's interests as well as justice. With countries on the African continent is a priority of the Russian foreign policy. We have been consistently promoting further strengthening of traditionally friendly relations with African delegates. I'm president of the African Union with the Ukraine, and that has been lasting for a long time already. Your action of the African Union, that is to continue making our contribution to peace between Russia and Africa. Furthermore, we came to listen to you and the world as a whole, and to ensure peace in Africa too. Convey to you, Your Excellency, and to the Russian people, peace between your two Africa. You've always listened to us each time when
It is too early to say whether the African leaders' effort to mediate peace between Ukraine and Russia will succeed. However, there are a number of factors that could make their efforts successful. First, the African leaders have a good relationship with both Ukraine and Russia. They have been able to maintain their neutrality in the conflict, which could give them some credibility as mediators. Second, the African leaders are aware of the impact that the war in Ukraine is having on Africa. They are concerned about the rising food prices and energy supplies, and they want to find a way to end the war that will minimize the impact on Africa. That the African leaders have a lot of to offer to both Ukraine and Russia. They have a large market of potential consumers, and they have a lot of natural resources they could offer to both countries, something that they need in order to reach a peace agreement. However, there are a number of issues there are a number of issues or factors that could make African leaders' efforts unsuccessful. First, the war in Ukraine is very complex, and there is a lot of different interests at stake. It will be difficult for African leaders to find a solution that will satisfy everyone. Second, both Ukraine and Russia are very reluctant to make concessions. They are both fighting for what they believe in, and they are both determined to win. This makes it difficult to reach a compromise. That the war in Ukraine is becoming increasingly polarized. There's a lot of pressure from both sides to continue fighting, and it's becoming more difficult to see a way out of this conflict. Only time will tell whether the African leaders' efforts to mediate peace between Ukraine and Russia will succeed. However, their efforts are a step in the right direction. They should not be underestimated. So thank you for watching this video. Leave your comment about your thoughts on Africa trying to mediate peace between Russia and Ukraine. Also, we thank you for the support that you have given us throughout the channel. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do so, and welcome for more videos in future.